Founder and director of the National Straight Pride Coalition, and this is chapter number 6 of our video book, How Straight Pride Coalitions Can Save America. How Straight Pride Marches Can Save America. And so, in our last chapter, we were discussing what does it mean to be a man. But I need to continue also on the attacks on just being a man right now. And so I'm speaking of a broad range of attacks from the youngest ages to the oldest ages of what it means to be a man, to downgrade men, to belittle them, to say that they're stupid, dumb idiots, whatever. It's a rape culture which doesn't exist, to make them look evil in order to demonize them. And this is part of the effort to break them apart from the natural family formation too, to demonize them in the eyes of women, so that women are suspicious of them, just as men are being trained to be suspicious of women. But in the continuance of how men are being put down, there's a classic example by the company named Gillette, which is a subdivision of Procter & Gamble. And to show how broad spectrum this attack on men is, they're putting on commercials which talk about toxic, so-called toxic masculinity. In other words, they're insulting their very client base. They could just sell razors. In old-fashioned advertising, companies would just look for profit. If they got a product of razors, they say, well, we've got the best razor. You should buy ours for this reason. But instead, they attack their very people who would use their product to call them jerks. Why would a company do that? How could they possibly do that? And we'll have a far greater explanation to you later of what I'm about to say, the reasons why. But the reasons why is they've been told by their controllers, who all use a blanket term, the plantation masters, who give them their money to operate, and they've been told, look, you do this advertisement for us the way we want it, and we'll cover your losses. Don't worry about losses. We'll cover it. We've got your back. Because if you don't, then you could possibly have more troubles than if you do. If you do. A hint. It's like we're talking about a mafia, a banker mafia, a financial mafia that can tell companies what to do to override their natural profit desire to continue to expand their corporation and tell them, you're going to do what we want you to do, even if it hurts the company, because we are your real masters. So think of it, this is a financial mafia. Just like in The Godfather, he had Luca Brasi who came up and was the muscle to enforce his desires on whoever didn't feel like obeying the Godfather. So we have a financial mafia which can tell our companies, as big as Procter & Gamble is, you will obey us over the profit margin. And I use this as an example. This is a broad cultural phenomenon which it manifests in many different ways, but it's very relevant to what we're doing, because that corporate mafia is behind the LGBTQ movement. They're part of the financial blank check which that movement has for whatever it wants to do. But another example of this, relevant to this financial corporation, we'll get back to masculinity itself in a second, but this also ties into masculinity. A few years ago, there was a law in North Carolina which made it illegal for men who imagined that they were women, so-called transgenders, to use the women's bathroom. For anybody to use a bathroom other than their biological, natural gender identity. So what happens? The NBA says that an all-star game in Charlotte, North Carolina, would be canceled by the NBA if the government of North Carolina did not reverse that law and allow psychotic transgenders, and they are psychotic, to use the bathroom of their choice. Now, why would a basketball league have any concern about this issue? Wouldn't we expect them to play basketball? And that's all there is to it. But suddenly they come out and claim it's discrimination to not let these psychotics use the bathroom of their choice. And that's another question we'll address to this. Transgenderism is a psychosis. It is a sickness. It is a broken soul, as we discussed in the previous video. It's an obvious broken soul. It's a sore thumb. It's a fantastic flashing lights broken soul. But the question is, why would the NBA do this? And the answer is because they were told, you do it or else. And because these financial mafia, the Luca Brazzis, came in and said, you're going to do what we tell you to do to override profit, because they're doing social engineering. Social engineering to warp the populace is more important than profit. That's what Procter & Gamble is involved in, social engineering, to warp the populace. And I'll lead into this before we return to masculinity. Social engineering. Think of advertising. Think of this table. We have a big table in front of us right now in this room. If there was a wall around that table, say about so high, and we open up a little door and we let a rat go through, and there's a maze. And then we have white-coated scientists who can say, oh, the rat follows this path, and the rat follows that path. How do we get him to follow another path? We'll put cheese down a path, or we'll put an electric shock around one path so he avoids one path. Well, how do we get the rat to go the way we want him to do? Social engineering, my friends, is to look at us all. We are all in this nation lab rats. That's what you call advertising. It is to warp us, to give us thoughts to buy this, don't buy that, do this, especially in our time, do this or don't do that, or support this, support that, or don't support that. And my friends, we're being socially engineered based on our religious indoctrination, such as believing in evolution, which is a base. And then we can be socially engineered to do many other things, such as support the LGBT movement, even when it is a movement, a culture of death. There is no such heterosexuality, which is one of the things we're going to celebrate at our event. Is that we're all here. Everyone who's listening to me came by heterosexuality. That's the bottom line. If we had a homosexual culture, we would not be listening to this because we'd all be dead and not born. So homosexuality is automatically, by definition, a culture of death. Heterosexuality or Christianity is a culture of life. But if you can indoctrinate people, socially engineer them, to teach them that a culture of death is acceptable, such as Christianity has a culture of life, where birth is a fantastic thing because we're bringing a whole new fantastic human being into the world, a gift from God. The other side says there is no God and babies are trash, they're rocks, they're worthless, they're scum, they're a drag on your life. Why would you want to have them? All they do is kick and scream and do all this stuff. You want to have a better life than that. You've got a vacation to take. You've got a career to think of. You've got all these things, and they get in the way. They're big. Just throw them out the window. Don't let them drag you down. So we have two completely different philosophies. So, my friends, you can be socially engineered to have these thoughts, these sick thoughts, and you think they're yours. That's the best advertising. It makes you think that the idea originates in you, and you don't realize that you're being trained like a lab rat. So this is social engineering at its best. That the entire LGBT community has been warped, and the idea of this war front again is that war is going to war against Christianity, and we're now going to accept their death values. That's why you have an entire political party like the Democrats. They cannot say that they oppose infanticide. The most basic thing, elemental thing of being a human being, that you have a baby born, and you can't say that you oppose killing it after birth. That is the most fundamental thing, and how can people possibly believe in that? Because they have a different religious value, completely different, and also because without realizing that they've been warped. I used to be, and we'll get back to masculinity eventually, but I used to be so-called pro-choice. Why? Because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was told, women's rights, you have to support women's rights. So my naive, stupid view was that, of course, women should have the rights. Who would take them away? And I want to defend women. I want them to keep their rights, but I didn't realize what they were talking about. And to spring into a deeper explanation of this story, we'll still get back to masculinity because this is relevant to it. I was invited to a picnic once by a friend who I barely knew. He said there was a friend of his who was in the hospital, and we only have 1 minute, so I'll have to complete this in chapter 7. But that friend, I didn't know her either, but it was a life-shattering, a life-changing event. I asked him if I could go see his friend in the hospital, and I saw his friend in the hospital. And that was a fantastic change in my life. That was a divine intervention. Because the Creator, my term for God, brought me to a whole completely different realization of life through that interaction, which I'll describe in chapter 7. So this is the National Straight Pride Coalition in our video series. NationalStraightPrideCoalition.org. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.